When we were young, we read more often because we had to. It was the only way for us to get knowledge and to be enlightened. Read to your heart's delight and be enlightened. Let's just read. It's a podcast by Andy's Personal Development. Stay tuned for more reading and enlightenment. Hi, and welcome to this episode of Let's Just Read. I'm Andy, your podcast host from Andy's Personal Development. Remember, we are Christ centered and we are transformational driven. On today's podcast, we have a very intriguing and interesting guest to share with you. And I'm going to make a short introduction, tell you a little bit about our guest. For the purpose of references, this episode is entitled The New York Wanderer, Benjamin Feldman. So let us tell you a bit about our guest. The New York Wanderer Press and New York Wanderer blog are projects by New York-based author and historian Benjamin Feldman. Ben has lived and worked in New York City since 1969. His essays and book reviews about New York City, American history, and Yiddish culture have appeared online and in print in CUNY's Gotham History Blotter, the New York Partisan Review, Columbia County History and Heritage, and Ducts Literary Magazine. So, let's welcome our guest on this episode of Let's Just Read, Benjamin Feldman. Welcome, Ben.
How are you? Very good, thank you.
I am great. I'm wonderful. And I hope you're doing fine as well. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Let's Just Read, our podcast. So there's so many things that I'd like to ask you, or we can have a thrilling conversation about. And I don't use the word thrilling lightly when I look at the level of your writing and your authorship. But I'd like you to share with our audience what is the one thing that you can identify, if there's anything specific that inspires you to write?
That is a very simple question to answer. It's not a simple question, but it's simple for me to answer. And I'll be concise. I am a big fan of visiting cemeteries. Okay, and underneath every tombstone or even an unmarked grave lies a human being with a soul that has hopefully ascended to heaven, and where the story of that person's life, be they unknown, be they well known, be they notorious, be they a sinner of enormous proportion, it is a story of a human being. And with your internet resources that we have today, you can stand there, you can walk around the cemetery, and you can learn. And this is what I am thirsty for. I'm like a man crawling across the Sahara Desert. I take my portable phone to the cemetery. I go to Catholic cemeteries, to Jewish cemeteries, to non-denominational cemeteries, to Islamic cemeteries, and I write about these experiences, and I find out. I love to learn. I love to teach, and I love to learn. So
Great.
I engage in a practice. You could just call it in English the raising of the dead.
Mm,
Raising the dead is a very ancient tradition, pre-Christian, obviously, for thousands
yeah.
of years, and it's a tradition in Jewish religious literature. And I read and speak and write Yiddish fluently. I learned starting at age 46. I did not grow up in a Yiddish speaking household, but it's my roots. And I'm interested in your roots and your roots and your roots and every one of
Yeah.
your listeners' roots. and I
Yeah.
love the language in order to help me raise the souls of the dead.
All right. I hear you, and I appreciate your explanation there, Benjamin. Thank you so much. When did you actually discover that you had the passion, the gift, the affinity to writing?
Well, truthfully, I'd say when I was about 7 years old.
Wow. Okay.
Um, did I get around to it in a passionate way? Well, obviously in school, um, I had to write. I love to write. I wrote the assignments, the papers, the short stories, etc. The same thing in college, but I did not have free time to do so, where I could just do exactly what I wanted to do. I was blessed by God to be able to retire at age 48, and I got lucky in a business in which I was involved in a very tiny percentage way, but someone got wealthy and they helped me out, and so I have not worked had a salaried job since the year 2000, and
Wow.
I turned 72 years old yesterday,
Mm.
and I've spent most of the last 24 years researching and writing essays, books, articles in magazines and newspapers, as well as teaching English to people from all over the world who belong to a school that is operated by Catholic Charities here in New York City. And I've been doing that for quite a few years. And so I live a blessed life.
Wow. You've been blessed. And a happy belated 72nd birthday to you. You look well for that age, and I don't say it lightly.
Thank
So
you.
many stresses that people have to deal with in the world today. It's an amazing thing. So we are thankful to God for you and for your skill and your desire to share that with the world. What do you want people to mostly get from your style of writing? What's the main message that you want people to acquire as a result of
Hmm.
reading your writings?
Mhm. I am a born storyteller. Okay, I speak out loud. I speak in public, not frequently, but not infrequently. Whenever I arrange an invitation, I speak about my work, and I want people to realize. I want people to share with me the interest in. I could have 5 people in the audience, and I am entirely
Okay.
satisfied if they are interested in what I have to say. I like to tell stories. I don't read from scripts. I once did this. I once did this at Greenwood Cemetery. I had 155 people in the audience listening to me give a talk about the first full length book I ever published, and they started yelling at me, "Put the script
Wow.
down. Stop reading to us. Just tell us the story." And
Mm-hmm.
so I did what they said, and I got the I think it's important for everybody to realize if you want to tell a story, you have an audience and they are interested in you as a human being. Don't worry about making mistakes. There is no such
Mm-hmm.
thing as making a mistake when you tell a story. You know,
Right.
your audience doesn't know. They don't know the story. Okay? If you spell a
Okay.
word wrong, who cares? Tell the story. Be
Okay.
alive.
Mm-hmm. I get that. And I appreciate your frank and open commitment towards being just true and tell the story. I love that. So we're going to delve in a bit of a history as we look at your work. And you're going to tell me whether what I'm saying is actually true or not. But from the information I've gotten, this here is supposed to be your first publication. Yes?
The one that we're going to talk about today, the dentist. Oh, Butchery on Bond Street. That
Yep.
was my first full length book.
Your
Uh,
first. All right. So
the
we're gonna get those out of the way, and then we're gonna get to the main writing. Tell us a bit about Butchery on Bond Street.
Butchery on Bond Street, which has a subtitle which is much more explanatory.
Uh huh.
It's slightly academic in its tone. It's not an academic book. The subtitle is oh, I forget. It's something about the war between the sexes in antebellum New York. And as you can
Okay.
see, there's a man in his coffin on the cover of the book. This man was
Yes.
named Dr. Harvey Burdell. He was actually a dentist. He actually had no medical training. But in the 1850s, all you had to do is hang up a shingle and start fixing people's teeth. He was
Right.
a very, very, very immoral human being, and he
Mm.
paid with his life. He was murdered
Wow.
by an ex-girlfriend whom he raped twice, upon whom he produced an abortion with his bare hands. Okay, and every word in the book is true. And this was an infamous crime in the 19th century, middle of the 19th century. And I'm sorry to have to say this, but he richly deserved to die. And
Mm-hmm.
it's probably his ex girlfriend was acquitted of the murder in a criminal trial in New York City. She probably arranged it, and
Yeah.
he was garroted and stabbed with what we call a pig sticker,
Yeah.
which you kill pigs by pithing them
Mm-hmm.
down 17 times.
Wow.
Okay, and he deserved every minute of it. And I hate to say that, but I can be judgmental. And he hated women, and he was very, very. I would say he was misogynistic, to say the very least. And
Mm.
well, the book is about that. You can get it on Amazon, like everything.
Right. How did
Took
you manage? Yeah. How did you manage, Benjamin, to get access to that information way back in the history profile? What was
lots.
that like for you? Was it a challenge, or how
It
did
was
you manage?
it was a challenge. It was fun. It was expensive, and the book came out in 2007. I started it in 2000, so the archival resources on the internet were quite limited at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And so I actually purchased bound volumes of the major New York newspapers for
Mm-hmm.
1856 and 1857, which are
Yeah.
printed in 8-point type. And I used the microfilm at the library, and those bound volumes still sit under my bed. They are precious to me. I don't ever take them out, but that was my main source of information. And then there was one sort of half of a book written about the murder by Jack Kinney, I think his name was. He's deceased. So I read that, but it wasn't really up to date. It was really half the story. And I decided that I would write the dispositive history of this crime. I had a mentor, a woman named, excuse me, Professor Patricia Klein Cohen, who is
Mm-hmm.
the chair emeritus of the Santa Barbara, California, UC California History Department.
Yeah.
And I was just thrilled. I mean, I just emailed her and said, "Hello, I'm writing this book. You wrote the definitive biography of the previous murder, most famous murder in New York. Would you mind conversing with me?" So she became my mentor, and she reviewed every word, and she correct, and we're friends to this day. It's been 24 years.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
So I'm looking at a comparison, and one of the reasons why I asked about a writer's first book is because I think that the first impression creates a foundation really for your future processes in terms of the writing, the style, and basically what people get from it as a result of you putting it out there. So, Benjamin, focus now into your recent publication, the most recent publication. Tell us about that.
That is entitled, as you know, The Dentist Shake,
Yeah,
Charlie Walensky's ascent from the slums of the Lower East Side to the Côte
yeah.
d'Azur. And it's, oh boy, Mr. Walensky, who changed his name to Willen, was from a poor Jewish family, but not terribly impoverished, born in
Mm-hmm.
1894. He was quite an amoral person, also, like Dr.
Yeah,
Bertel, but he
yeah.
straightened himself out. He straightened himself out. He was a playboy, he was a skirt chaser, he liked to befriend wealthy women and steal their
Mm.
money. And his first wife he abandoned in Brooklyn while she was pregnant with his child, and he took
Wow.
off he took off for Paris. Um, I found out about him through the second book that I wrote. He was a major character in it, which is a story of another really terribly disturbed uh, uh, if you could cross Michael Jackson with Donald Trump and they had a
Wow.
baby, it would be
Wow.
a guy named Daddy Browning. And so
Wow.
Charlie Willen played a role in that second book. He cuckolded Daddy Browning, who was married to a much younger woman. And I lost track of Charlie Willen in about 1923. And then through the internet, through something, messages that just came in over the transom, as we say, I became acquainted with a couple members of Charlie Willen's family, his grandson, okay, and his son, his illegitimate son, who's still alive, and was born in 1936, I believe, in
Wow.
France. Grew up there some, and now lives in a dilapidated trailer in Batesville, Arkansas. And
Wow.
I know this man quite well. So I met these two fellows over the internet. I purchased a family archive from Patrick Willen, okay, and um, and it just contained this amazing amount of correspondence, photos, documents, objects, all of which pertained to Charlie Willen's, let's just call it his career in the south of France and on the Côte d'Azur, in the area of Nice and then in Monte Carlo. And he chased a lot of skirts, if you could put it that way.
Hmm.
Uh, Made the acquaintance of some very famous women. Uh, and then he decided to settle down, and he married. He married well. He married a woman from a good family, and they moved first to well, they lived in Nice, and then they moved to Monte Carlo. And Charlie went into business there. He had a photo developing shop. He had a marine equipment shop, but for fishing and for diving. He and his partner, who is the father of the fellow out in Arkansas in the trailer, invented the spear gun that we use to this very day. They invented the diver's goggles, the mono goggle that we use to this very day. They didn't get tremendously wealthy from these things because they were copied and the patents didn't work that well, but whatever. They made some money. And Charlie had a lot of side businesses, and they climbed the social ladder in Monte Carlo. And I don't have to tell you that Monte
Yeah.
Carlo, as the saying goes, Monte Carlo is a sunny place for shady people. And,
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
but
Wow.
Charlie was not shady. He was an honest businessman. He made friends with society people. He sold their real estate for them, and unfortunately, he died in 1968 at age 74. His wife lived 20 more years.
Hmm.
He was the father. They were the parents of a very, very famous Parisian, ended up moving to Paris, jazz saxophonist named Barney Willen.
Okay.
Very famous.
Yeah.
So that's the story. There are lots of aspects to this story. I just got
Yeah.
crazy about it. The key to me, Andy, I get crazy about the stories I tell. I'm just so involved. I figured somebody else might want to read about this.
Yeah.
This took 6 years.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. 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 That's a long time to do the research and get the stuff together. Well, it was worth it, I suppose.
Absolutely. 5 trips to the Côte d'Azur for research,
Yeah.
and I speak French rather somewhat fluently, so I can function quite well.
Yeah.
And I have cousins who live west of Nice, so
Okay. Yeah. Logistics, that was in your favor as well.
not a bad life.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking the rather intriguing aspects of your writing with all the historical connotations and the drama, the stories involved, most of which you have identified to be true. You were hands on with the research. Have you been approached by anyone, or have you personally thought about doing maybe a TV series or movie with regards to
Well,
any of your publications?
it's interesting that you say that. The first book, The Butchery on Bond Street, I actually hired a film agent named
Mm-hmm.
Lynn Plachette, who you wouldn't
Uh-huh.
recognize the name, but she is the cousin of a deceased TV star and movie star named Suzanne Plachette from the
Uh-huh.
50s, 60s. So she
Right.
took a planet, but back in those days, in 2007, the appetite of Hollywood, there was no streaming, and the appetite of Hollywood for historical films had diminished a great deal because of the abysmal failure of Martin Scorsese's Gangs of New York. He had lost $85 million of his investors' money. And
Wow.
so there were no more films. However, this
Yes.
this most recent book, The Dentist Shake, is has been published by Amazon Premium Publishing, which is a regular publisher, and they're really quite excellent. And so one of the services they offer is to circumvent the problem that Amazon Studios, um, their policy, they will not speak to agents. Amazon Studios sources their own content. They don't want to talk to your agent. They will not talk to an agent. So for a few $100s, Butchery on Bond Street and its sequel, which is on my Amazon page, and also Call Me Daddy, which is the prequel to the Dentist
Yeah.
Shake,
Yeah.
are being considered by Amazon Studios. I'll have an answer probably in 30 days as separate projects. And if they accept either of them, I mean, I'll be 80 years old when it's done. But the upfront bonus is quite sizable, just for
Okay.
signing, just for negotiating a contract. You get paid
Right.
$10,000.
Right. Right.
It's not going to change my life, but it would be great. It would be great. It'll never
Okay.
happen. Cross your fingers, but we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like something that you should be excited about, Benjamin. Something that you can look forward to.
Well, I don't try to get. I try not to get too excited. I write
Ah.
because I enjoy it. I do not make money from my writing. Occasionally,
Okay.
I mean, Barnes and Noble has now ordered 700 copies of The Dentist Shake. Okay, but they have control over their own pricing, and
Oh.
I'll make like $1 a copy or something, because I priced this latest book very inexpensively on Amazon.
Okay.
I want
Okay.
people to read it. I don't need the money. I'm not a billionaire or anything, but how much are you going to make from writing a book? Unless you're
Yeah.
unless you're Stephen King, what are you going to make?
Mm. Okay. Okay. So tell us about this intriguing character. I think I probably saved him for last. William Niblo.
Oh, Niblo.
Niblo. Ah, there you go. William Niblo and his pleasure garden of yore.
Yes.
Tell us
So
about that.
don't infer anything immoral from the words pleasure garden. Okay.
I
Pleasure.
won't.
Yeah. Pleasure gardens were established first in London in the 17th century as places where genteel people could go because there were very, very few public parks. And of course, the streets were miserable, horse manure and, prostitutes wandering around, and it just dangerous. And the same
Yep.
thing was true in New York City in the 18th century.
Mm, yeah.
So Niblo, who immigrated to New York probably in the year 1810, of Scots-Irish heritage, after a career as what's called a coffee house owner, which a coffee house was not Starbucks, it was a tavern and a hostelry, and etc. He sold that and made some money, and he and his wife, who was his full business partner, opened a pleasure garden on the grounds of a former riding academy and circus grounds, right in the middle of what was the middle of Manhattan back then. And it was a place of genteel entertainment, uh,
Mm-hmm.
paintings, operatic performances, acrobats, no unaccompanied women allowed.
Okay.
No to women, but that was the policy.
Yeah.
Okay, the gentleman would not have to, be tempted to about misconduct by anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
the admission fee was quite modest. I used to
Yeah.
spend the day there. There were separate ladies and gentlemen's salons for refreshments. Men could partake of very weak alcoholic beverages. Women could have lemonade or tea and sherbets and pound cakes. And it grew and grew and grew and grew until it reached the size of today's Radio City Music Hall. There were
Yeah.
3,200 seats, and people from all over the world, not all of the Western world, um, competed to perform there. So, I mean, Jenny Lind performed there. I mean, just everybody performed there, and it advertised its shows in European newspapers in the West Coast. I mean, it was the place to go, and,
Okay.
and it lasted a long time. And Niblo himself was a devout Christian. He climbed the usual ladder in the United States. You start out as a it's funny, but you start out as a Baptist or a Methodist, as
Uh-huh.
a then you decide that you're going to become a Presbyterian, and then you decide to go upper class and become an Anglican.
Okay.
And he was a devout Episcopalian. And after his wife died prematurely, 27 years before his death, he built a tomb for her in Brooklyn in Greenwood Cemetery. He went and visited that tomb with his Bible in hand every single day to
Wow.
pray for the next 27 years, to pray for her soul. And I mean, he was a warden and vestryman of Calvary Episcopal Church in New York City, which still stands. And you can go sit in his pew, number 103. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I've done so. I mean, I'm Jewish, so I don't go take communion. I don't take communion because
Yeah.
communion is offered in Episcopalian churches. But it's an inspiring place, absolutely.
Okay.
And most of its congregation is now from the West Indies.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Episcopalian
interesting.
West Indians.
Yeah. I've heard the name before. I think I probably would have seen a couple of them as well. Yeah, that's intriguing. History. I love
Yeah,
history.
good.
I love history. It's challenging. It's also novel in terms of the thing that you can discover and know, and maybe even resonate with regards to people and their lifestyle and the reason why they did things, the reason why they discovered things, and what they basically had to share with the world. So, wow, that's really intriguing. Thank you for sharing, Benjamin. Now, in all the works that you have done, which one that you think in your mind or in your heart resonates the most with you?
Wow, that's a very difficult question. I That is very difficult. Um, I mean, the personal lives of Dr. Harvey Burdell and his girlfriend, they don't resonate with me, but it's still a fascinating.
Mm,
Charlie Willen, oh well, he might have reformed and gone straight and gotten married and had a child, but he was really he was a swindler, okay,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
he swindled women, and he didn't swindle people in business. But William Niblo is an inspiring person, absolutely inspiring person. What man do you know who has visited his deceased wife's grave every day for 27 years?
Wow, yeah, yeah.
And he would bring friends with him, and they would have a picnic outside the mausoleum, and they
Wow.
would feed the goldfish. And I've actually, in 2013, I was asked by the cemetery with which I'm very, very close, if I would create a mid 19th century circus of the kind that would have been produced by Mr. Niblo, a very family oriented, proper circus at the cemetery grounds in front of the lake, which faces the mausoleum. And it's 2013, and I'd never produced so much as a cornstalk. But I said, oh, sure, I can do that. Oh, yeah, sure. And so we did. I got my nephew to help me. I rented, all kinds of equipment. I hired performers. I didn't know what I was doing. It was on a wing and a prayer, as we say. And it was successful.
Mm,
And it is now
wow.
grown to a two-night each summer performance. We're doing it July 18th and 19th. We'll have 750 paying customers each night. They've got to plunk down $40 just to come sit on the grass, bring your
Mm-hmm.
own picnic, bring your own beverages of a non-alcoholic variety, and watch the show.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Wow.
cemetery makes money from this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fun. I don't produce it anymore. They asked me if I would mind if turned it over to a local Brooklyn nonprofit circus company, and I said, twist my arm. Oh, that's enough. Okay, I'll show up in my top hat, my tuxedo, and with my supposed wife. I hire a friend each year, or I get a volunteer to help me each year to
Okay.
to imitate my wife, and we promenade and we tip our hats and we give a little speech up at the mausoleum. Because I will say, for Mr. Nibble, he did step off the path of righteousness just once.
Mm.
That was as a single
Hmm.
man,
Yeah.
and he had an affair with another circus performer who was unmarried, and he impregnated her, and he refused to acknowledge his paternity in
Wow.
2016. However, she went to court and sued him, and she was successful. And he was forced to put up what the term may even be used in Trinidad and Tobago to this day because you have the British law system. It's called a bastardy bond. And a bastardy bond pays for the expenses of wet nurses and blah, 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 blah. And
Yeah.
Mr. was forced to pay that. And inside the mausoleum, there is a sculpture of a recumbent, apparently sleeping little boy, and nobody's
Mm.
ever known what it's doing there, how it got there, even though the
Yeah.
cemetery has records and records and records, and I've read all
Right.
of them many times. So I got one of my co-volunteers at the cemetery to help me pick, and I got permission to pick this sculpture up. It weighs about 200 pounds, I'd say, and we took it out of the mausoleum into the sunlight. And in the sunlight, you could see carved on the back of it, on the pedestal, Fecit 1855. With that, I knew it was manufactured or sculpted in 1855, 4 years after Mrs. Niblo died. Mr. Niblo had guilt on his conscience, a guilty conscience,
Mm.
and he
Mm.
decided to do something to memorialize his, because the boy did not live a long life. He was in the
Yeah.
poorhouse, sent out to hard labor,
Uh-huh.
age 7, probably died when he was 10. But he did the Christian thing. He built a memorial, but he waited until after his wife was deceased because she knew
Yeah. Nothing about it.
nothing about it. No,
Yeah.
nobody knew about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was an interesting thing. And boy was
Wow.
boy was that sculpture heavy. Whew.
200 pounds. Yeah, that would be heavy.
There were two of us, and
Wow.
managed. We managed.
Yep. Good. So I just have two more questions as we come to a close. And the first question, Benjamin, is: are there any more works in the future that you're looking to write again?
Yes, it will come as no surprise to you, Andy, that the next book, which is in its earliest stages, although I've completed one section of it already, is going to be a collection of essays about people interred and entombed in a Jewish cemetery in Staten Island
Mm.
that is very old and is was endowed by a British Jewish philanthropist named Baron. He wasn't a baron, but I guess Queen Victoria made him a baron, Baron de Hirsch. Uh,
Oh, okay. Okay.
he's endowed.
Wow.
Uh, made his fortune in the railroad business, having
Hmm.
obtained Queen Victoria the franchise for the Intercontinental Express or whatever they call it. It goes from what was Yugoslavia to Turkey. So
Hmm.
he made a lot of money, and his wife who was Austrian, was the daughter of a banker. So they did not lack for money. And he set up schools and cemeteries all over the Western world. And they're not religious places, they are secular. Uh, but there's still, the cemetery is a Jewish place, and it's filled with very interesting graves. And
Wow.
I wrote an article about a plot. There, many of the graves are in communal plots that are owned by a union society or a political society or
Hmm.
a congregation. And I wrote an article about a society that belongs to the first bagel bakers sick and benevolent society. Okay,
Okay.
because there used to be a lot of union bagel bakers in New York.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And my burial plot I bought one there quite recently. I want to be
Hmm.
that cemetery, and it's steps. It's steps from this other plot.
Interesting.
Cuckoo. I'm cuckoo.
Wow.
When I get hungry, I'm 6 feet under, and I get hungry at night. I'll get up, put on my bathrobe. I'll walk over to the bagel bakers. I'll ask them for a snack. I'll have my snack, and then I'll go back and I'll lie back down where I'm supposed to be.
Wow, I like that.
Man of the
So,
land.
yeah, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. So, if you had one thing, a parting word to say to the people that would be listening to this podcast, what would you say to them?
Parting word. Take a look at my books on Amazon or wherever you want to take a look. Take a look at my website. It's all about. It's not just about Jewish things. It's about human life, uh, and believe in your own storytelling. Storytelling,
Mm,
tell your stories to your
yeah,
children, your grandchildren, your parents, and share. Get out there and
yeah,
share with other
yeah,
human beings. That
yeah.
is the Christian thing to do.
Right. Great. Wonderful. So you mentioned Barnes and Noble and also Amazon. Are they the only two places that they can get your publications?
I think so at this point. I mean, selling
Hmm.
books through bookstores is passe. Okay, I mean, Barnes and Noble actually has opened 700 brick and mortar stores once
Yeah.
again in the United States. But the place to buy books is online from
Right.
various online bookstores, and Amazon is, yeah, the defining, for better or for worse. They are they're the definitive the place to get books. You can get Kindles, electronic books, paper
Yeah.
books, whatever.
Yeah. Wonderful. So
World
there
we
you
live
have it, folks. Yeah. The New York Wanderer. Sorry, you were saying something, Benjamin?
in. No, I'm done.
Yeah. We have had in our presence the New York Wanderer, Benjamin Feldman, and his very intriguing history and past with regards to his writing. I have been soaked up in that kind of atmosphere, and I love history, the intrigue of history, the novelty of history. And he has had the opportunity firsthand to deal with it, to exploit it, to assess it, to do the research. So check out his information. His website is on the screen as we speak. The New York Wanderer, Benjamin Feldman. So until next time, folks, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development on Let's Just Read Together with my guest, Benjamin Feldman, saying so long, Godspeed, God bless,
God bless.
Shalom,
Shalom.
Namaste.
God bless. Thank you, Andy.
You're welcome. Bye for now, people.
Take care.
All right.